Elbow palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all. Thank you for showing up. Anyone here for the first time? Is you here for the first time? What brings you here? Oh, you got your hand in the air. So
Just the experience and just learning, always learning.
Yeah.
Something new.
Nice.
So,
Well, welcome. Glad you're here.
Just trying to get back into my practice.
Yeah. What happened to it?
Life, I guess.
Darn life just ruins everything.
I don't know if it ruins everything.
Yeah.
Gets in the way sometimes.
It does, doesn't it? What else?
I was many years ago here.
Yeah.
I've been so many years.
Been many years.
Yeah,
Where you been?
here in San Diego, but
Oh.
you know, after the virus, I was in a home.
Oh, yeah.
So I frequently was here before the virus.
Well, welcome back. Yeah, we closed 18 months. March 12th, I'll never forget, March 12th, 2020. Maggie and I put a sign up on the door that says, we will be closed. It said the sign, I can still remember standing on that step, putting the sign up that said, we will be closed for 2 weeks. And, you know, not knowing what to expect, you know, this is March. So the world, nobody knew what to expect. And 18 months later, we reopened. It was wild. What a heavy, crazy time that was.
Yeah.
I mean, for so many reasons. A lot of people we knew directly through here who lost family members and friends who got sick. And it was hard because, you know, this is a place, and anywhere like this, you know, meditation, spiritual places, yoga, whatever your practice is, that people go to find a sense of community and peace and calm and stillness within all of the chaos. And at a time where something like that was needed more than ever, even legally, we were not allowed to be open as a religious facility. San Diego had a tiered system. Even when it was allowed to be open again, it opened on a tiered system. So for a long time, for almost a year, we couldn't, as a religious organization, we couldn't even legally open our doors. We wouldn't have anyways, just for safety and protection of everybody. But legally, we couldn't open our doors. And then there was probably about a 6-7 month period where San Diego had this tiered system where religious facilities could open for like X%, allow X% of the people to come in or something like that. And it's just like, you know, we haven't picked and chosen who walked in these doors for 18 years, or at that time, I guess 13 years or whatever it was. But we weren't going to start like, okay, you're suffering more, so you can come in. You look like you're happy today, so you can't come in. I mean, we kind of talked through how would we determine who got to come in and who didn't. I mean, it was just the craziest thing. So we were like, look, we're either going to be open or we're going to be closed. I remember the hardest, I think, just from conversations with people and just for me, at least common sense, but the recovery community that many of you know is such a huge part of this, of the temple. I mean, talk about a community that needed a safe space more than anyone, and that was where the hearts, it was just so hard to be closed. So for 18 months to have these doors closed. I remember doing these classes and sitting here staring at this darn little thing, and there was nobody here. And I remember, especially a lot of the regulars that were always here, and many of you have been here for many years, and you all had your favorite seats. So, I would go from, as I do, I look person to person to person. It's something I've always done for years that I've been doing this. But when there were no seats here, there were no people in the seats, and I would go from person to person to person, and there were certain people that would pop in my head as I looked at this empty chair, just because that's where they always sat. But yeah, what a wild time, and I think it's just always when we experience things like that, it's just opportunities to reflect on the being grateful to have. And again, I'm not even talking about just here. A lot of us have many communities we're part of, but just grateful for the importance of community, and how important that is to be around other people who are struggling and trying to get through their madness. So don't ever underestimate how important it is to practice with others. And again, I don't care where it is. And that's the Buddha's teachings on the triple gem. It's not just the Buddha and the teachings, it's the Sangha, the community, and having people to practice with and challenge each other and hold each other accountable and things like that is really, it's important. So yeah, I was, as were many, really glad when we reopened. And it was interesting, and I'll close with this and then we'll start our meditation. But I remember for about 6 months when we reopened, it was a really weird time because you come here to be comfortable and there was nobody in the space that was comfortable. Everybody looking around, who had a mask, who didn't, who got the vaccine, who didn't, who was sitting close to me, who was sitting far from me, spacing out the seats. Talk about trying to create a comfortable place at a time where nobody was comfortable. But here we are. So, yeah. All right, so we're going to start with a meditation practice. To those who are joining virtually, welcome, glad you're here as well. Feel free to say hello. Beirut, glad you're here. Feel free to say hello in the chat box. There's a screen somewhere on your screen. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos, and it's practice of learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward. It allows the back to straighten, shoulders to relax. If you're on a chair, bench, whatever you're sitting on, also just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. I'll guide us as we begin. We'll settle into a little bit of silence. Most important, do not expect anything. You're not going to shut your mind off. You won't think nothing. It won't go blank. We're just going to sit and breathe. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. Start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. eventually settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, feel them fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from your practice, just sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize how you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands across the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada. It's dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. That's what we get. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This is not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment is often filled with conflict, chaos, difficulties, and challenges. And this practice is learning to be with life as it arises, not trying to escape from every conflict we have, but learning to sit with them, watching the nature of your own mind, and seeing how your thoughts and your words and your actions impact your entire life. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do in each moment. That's it. I try not to complicate these teachings. I find them very simple to understand and incredibly difficult to put into practice. It's really the question of applying very simple, fundamental, basic teachings of loving kindness and compassion into everything and everyone we interact with. Most of the Buddhist teachings, we were all, maybe not all of us, but most of us may have been taught what the Buddha taught by the time we were like 8 years old. And then the hardest part is to practice it, to do it. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend a lot of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that. So much time focused on the actions of others. That's their practice. That's their mess. This practice is taking care of your own mess and not trying to fix everyone else's. Anyone in here spend a lot of their time trying to change what other people do? How's that working for you so far? The funny thing is we can't even change half the time what we think and say and do. I mean, how hard is that? It's like next to impossible. And yet for some reason we have this ridiculous idea that we're just going to magically be able to change what everybody else thinks and says and does. And yet we roam around with our mind, our thoughts, our body, and the ability to change and do so much in our own worlds. We can't even do that. And maybe that's why we just shift to thinking, well, I'm just going to have everybody else do what I want them to do. That'll be easier. I don't know. I don't have enough time to get into why we do that, but thought just popped into my head, I think, for the first time. Anyways, I'll pause there. For me, I always really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. To those who are joining virtually, again, welcome. Glad you're here. Feel free to say hello. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat box, and I'll do my best to respond. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening for questions. Yeah.
Thanks. So thank you for leading us through that. Everybody needed that today.
Yeah.
So thank you. I wanted to express some gratitude. One of the things I've been thinking about is when Buddha started to become awakened, he had a wife and a child and made the decision to leave them in the palace. And I guess when I think about compassion, I struggle a little bit to rectify the compassion to his family and leaving his family. And I'm wondering if you can speak to that.
Yeah, great question, especially for those who are new to Buddhism or newer and have just now found out for the first time that the Buddha had a wife and child and left them. Yeah. Spoiler alert. This is one of my, it is one of my favorite questions because it's a big one. One, as we said, it's an opportunity for a lot of people who don't realize that to realize that, and then I'll address it specifically. But I think it brings up really important aspects of Buddhism and the time. But before I get to that, let me back up and just kind of paraphrase for those virtually or anyone here maybe didn't hear you. Your question was first, you just said thank you for the meditation, to express gratitude for the practice. You said you needed it. And the second thing was, which is interesting the way you worded it. I'm going to paraphrase it pretty closely, but you pretty much said when the Buddha was close to awakening, he left his wife and child. And then you went on to talk about how you're having a hard time to kind of rectify where the compassion is in that action, right? Yeah. So what's interesting is I want to first focus on the beginning piece. You say when he was beginning to awaken. So at the time of him leaving, he wasn't beginning to awaken. He was 29 years old. He was a prince living in a palace with a wife and consorts and many women and a child. Had all the wealth, all the riches, all the women, everything you can imagine. This is India 2,500 years ago. Let me back up very briefly just to put it in context for those who are new. He grew up a prince. Father was a king. This is 500 years before Christ. And as I said, he had everything. All the wealth, all the riches, anything you can imagine. He had it, right? Now, at 29 years old, he snuck out. And for the sake of the story, this happens over 4 times, but he snuck out and he saw 4 things. It's called the 4 sights. He saw old age, person getting older. He saw sickness, person getting sick. He saw death, kind of like a funeral procession. And he saw an ascetic, like a simple nun or a monk. He saw these 4 things. And he said to Chana, his buddy, his charioteer, who kind of drove him around on the horse carriage, he said, what is this? Do we all get old? Do we all get sick? Do we all die? And Chana said, yes, my lord, because it was his prince. He called him my lord. Yes, my lord. We all age. We all get sick. We all die. And Siddhartha, at this time, that was his name, Siddhartha Gautama, Siddhartha said, well, how can I, and I'm paraphrasing all of it. I mean, everyone who tells you anything about Buddhism is paraphrasing and making up everything. So let me just say that. Nobody knows, none of us were there. But he said something to the effect of, well, how can I live with a life of wealth and riches and all this luxury when there's a world out there that's suffering? Keep in mind also, if you haven't heard this story, when he was about 10 years, or when he was born, it was, and this piece is really important to understand this, to get to your question. When he was born, it was predicted that he would either become a great king, like his father, or like a monk or nun, an ascetic. And his father wanted him to be a king because he wanted him to rule. Now, when he was 10 years old, they say they were shooting like slingshots at birds, and they hit the bird. Bird fell to the ground, killed the bird. And it said at that moment, Siddhartha, this child, had endless compassion for this bird because he just realized that he'd taken the life of this bird. So they started to see this compassion kind of flowing out in him, and even as a child. So the father, what they did was everything that aged, they got rid of it. Flowers, as they died, they got rid of them. Anyone who got sick, they got rid of them. They didn't want Siddhartha to see old age, sickness, or death, because they knew if he saw it, he wouldn't want to stay there. He wouldn't want to become a king, right? So also important to introduce to this question is the cycle of rebirth, because this is critical in understanding this question. At the time of the Buddha, everybody, for the most part, believed in rebirth, reincarnation, continuation of consciousness, whatever you want to call it. They believed that you would continue. You would be reborn into the cycle. Now, if you went up to somebody in the streets in India 2,500 years ago and said you got one life and then you're going to heaven or hell, they would have thought you were crazy. Fast forward to today, and you tell people you're going to be reborn, and people think you're crazy today. So when he was teaching and how he was raised in a Hindu kind of Vedic environment, they were taught very differently than we were, right? I'll introduce this now, and I'm not justifying anything, I'm just explaining it to my understanding. But we think in this lifetime, this is my one partner. This is my husband. This is my wife. This is my child. This is my mother. This is my father. We think that, when I say we, meaning kind of the collective Western way of upbringing, is we think this is it, and then we're going to die and done. There's an expression in Buddhism that says, we have all been each other's mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and sons and daughters. Why? Because our consciousness, we is not like Jeff, but our consciousness has been around for endless time and has taken endless rebirths. And it will continue to go on for endless time and take endless rebirths. How many of you came here tonight because you want to make sure you have a good rebirth? Theo, and that's why he sits in the front row, right? And one in the back, right? So there's always one or two that are like, fine, I'll just give in and believe in this rebirth stuff. You don't have to believe in rebirth until it's happening. It only happened. So you don't have to believe in rebirth. It's totally irrelevant in Buddhist teachings. But for this aspect of it, it's really important to understand that Siddhartha wasn't sitting there thinking like, this is my one wife, this is my one child, these are my one parents, this is it, and then I'm done. No, he was thinking, I'm going to be reborn. And he was thinking all of these people are going to be reborn. And in the ultimate fundamental teachings of the Buddha, there's one cause of suffering. What is that one cause of suffering?
Attachment.
Nope.
Being born.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Being born. There are the things that cause us to suffer when we're born, which are attachment, craving, desire, greed, anger, ignorance, all these kind of key buzzword things. But the only thing that allows those things, the Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path, all that stuff, all of our suffering to even begin with, or to even occur to begin with, is we have to be born. So ultimately, at the time of the Buddha, there was only one way to stop yourself from suffering. And that was to what?
To die.
To die and not be reborn. Death wasn't it only. You had to not be reborn. Now, let me back up a little bit. Think about it this way. Everyone in this room, for the most part, think that you're going to go wherever you're going tonight. Maybe it's home, wherever you reside. Do y'all think you're going to wake up tomorrow? Hopefully, we don't know, right? But think of waking up tomorrow as that rebirth. That's it. And tomorrow's going to bring a whole new day. All new experiences, all new people. You're not going to be the same person you were right now. You're not even going to be the same person in a few moments when you walk out these doors. We are constantly changing. Each moment is brand new. Each day is brand new. At the time of the Buddha, lifetimes were like a billion things happen before the physical body comes together and ceases to exist at rebirth, right? So those are all these types of things that were going on. I can only imagine at that time, where when he, to your question, coming back to that, yes, after seeing these four things and after one wild, crazy night where they had a big party and a big celebration, I don't forget what the celebration was, doesn't matter. But when you see it depicted in like art form, everybody's kind of like laying around drunk and lots of naked men and women and everybody laying everywhere and the children are probably asleep. And he went in after seeing these four sights, after four different times, he kissed his wife, he kissed his child, and he left at 29 years old, right? And he left because he realized that he needed to figure out how to free himself from the cycle of rebirth and then come back and teach that. Because otherwise, when his wife dies and gets reborn, what's she going to continue to do? Suffer. When his child dies and is reborn, what is he going to continue to do? Suffer. So he wanted to figure out how to free all of them from the cycle of rebirth, which at the time was the only way to guarantee suffering. It is impossible to draw a parallel from that view and that perception to our experiences today. There is nothing, and I always say this jokingly, but I'm not, it sounds jokingly, but I'm not joking. There's nothing in this teaching that says, well, I'm Buddhist, so now I'm just going to leave my partner, my family, and I'm going to go off into the mountains. No, that is not the practice, that is not the teachings. That's not the message from that experience at all, right? This is not like a, green light to just bail on your responsibilities. Nor am I saying this as in defense or justification for what he did. But I can understand the mindset at that time, or at least I can attempt to understand the mindset at that time. So he left 6 years, went to the base of the Himalayan mountains. Then after 6 years of study, and by the way, they say that life that he was born, that he had been like thousands of lifetimes prior to that life, before being born Siddhartha Gautama, before being called the Buddha, which just means the awakened one. When he awakened at 35, and they called him the Buddha, and he taught the Four Noble Truths, the suffering, the cause, the ending of suffering, and the path, he then went back home. And his wife and his child and his mother, well, his mother died actually at birth. His mother, 7 days after he was born, died. And so his mother's sister, his aunt, married the king and raised him. She became a nun. Son became, and the wife and the son became monks. So they became monastics into the Buddha's order. And they say when the Buddha died, he entered into what's called parinirvana, which means death without any remainder, meaning no more rebirths. Again, that's the technical teachings, which is almost impossible for us, I think, to comprehend if we don't really have any knowledge or belief or depth around the cycle of rebirth. Because yes, on the surface, it just seems like, well, he just bailed. And yeah, he did. But he bailed because he didn't want them to suffer. And he knew if he stayed there and didn't figure it out, they would just continuously suffer life after life after life, endlessly. So for me as a practitioner, I think it's a really beautiful way to look at the sacrifice he made out of love and compassion for his family to help them ultimately, knowing that he'd had endless wives before and endless children before. So, but to draw parallels, really, I don't find it helpful. Yeah.
So we don't know the future, right?
Right.
in a lot of respects, like the Gautama Buddha like set out on a path of liberation, but he didn't know he was going to achieve it. And so when we're making decisions based on compassion, like I always think about considered action and stuff like that, of just taking the time to deliberate. But I'm just wondering, like, because yeah, sometimes good intentions turn evil, sometimes bad intentions turn out good, but you don't know, it's a baby. What is a solid decision-making process?
Yeah. The first question was easier. So just to paraphrase from maybe in the back of here, it was, the first part I think, which is really important, was that, when Siddhartha set out on this path to awaken, like he didn't know if he would be able to do it or not. He went into it, which to my understanding is correct. And so then the question really is around in making life decisions, life choices, and coming from, trying to come from a place of compassion. We don't always know how it's going to play out. And sometimes we can do compassionate acts and it works out great. And sometimes it works out in some evil, terrible way. So how do we, kind of reconcile this challenge to make wise decisions and compassionate decisions? And you said it a couple times, which is to come back to the intention. But then the question is, okay, well, if I, Jeff, with my own arrogant, ignorant views, am judging and labeling my intention, then I'm kind of screwed. Because if I am completely selfish and self-centered and think I'm the most important person in the world, and I'm trying to make compassionate decisions based on that, then I'm going to have some problems there. And so for me, these kind of two wings of Buddhism, wisdom and compassion, that's where I think the strongest, to me, the best word and the strongest practice is the word of cultivation.
Mm-hmm. Or discernment.
Discernment, absolutely.
Like I've heard it called discernment.
Yes, the wisdom of it. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah. The wisdom is often referred to as discernment. And you're absolutely right. We don't know. We don't know if our choices that we think are coming from wisdom and compassion are ultimately wise and ultimately compassionate. For me, the Theravada school of Buddhism and the approach of, very often Theravada monks, and I say this loosely over the years, you ask Theravada monks to like come and teach, and their general response is like, I'm an unenlightened practitioner, I'm an unenlightened monk. What do I have to teach? Again, I'm just generalization. Where Mahayana folks are like, 3 weeks into Buddhism and they're like, I can teach you everything.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot to be said about this approach of deep cultivation for many, many years, ultimately many, many lifetimes, but, to hopefully come from a place of wisdom and compassion. But like you said, the discernment is really difficult. And I think for me as a practice, what I do is, which is also a challenge because as an unenlightened, ignorant fool, how do I know if it is? But I ask myself, are my decisions that I'm making come from a place of thinking I am the most important thing? That's why I always say that. Is this all about me? Or is it at least not equally beneficial, if not more beneficial for others than it is for me? And try to be honest with that.
Yeah.
And over the years, I've seen the honest reflection on that. What's that?
Expand.
Yeah, get better. Like early on, when you grew up just like lying and cheating and stealing on everything, like you can manipulate anything, right? And early on in Buddhist practice, you can manipulate yourself into thinking like, this is so wise and compassionate. I look back over the last 20 years of this place of Buddhist stuff, and I'm like, things I did early on that I thought were wise and compassionate were the dumbest, selfish things in the world. Right?
You're learning discernment.
But you're learning as you go. And that's why I think that idea of cultivating, it's like, all the, metaphors kind of Thich Nhat Hanh style of, planting flowers. You plant a flower, it doesn't just keep growing. You got to water and sun and soil, all these little things, the meditation, the teachings, the community, the practice, all these things begin to cultivate so you can blossom the beautiful flower. But the flower also dies. And you just keep planting, watering those seeds.
But it also feeds the soil as it breaks down.
Absolutely. He said it feeds the soil as it breaks up. So yeah.
To add into his question, how much would say karma play into his idea of good or bad and good intention, bad intention playing against his energy?
Sure. So let me just to kind of throw it back to you. Often, and not to necessarily put you on the spot, but are you okay if I put you on the spot?
That's fine.
Okay, cool. What's your name?
It's Chris.
Chris. I mean, new people, I like to be a little gentler than
Okay.
normal, but except for Ross. Ross was pretty hard.
That's
on this
discernment.
Discernment, see? Proof.
I needed it.
Hang on. I know you were. Stop. Trying to mess with you, Ross.
I know. I love
So what do you think karma is where I was going to go with
It's action. It's action and energy that you put forward.
this. Okay. Based on what?
On the deeds that you do and evil thoughts, good and evil, defined by what you do, How
Okay.
you make people feel and how you treat others and.
Yeah. No, great. I wanted to hear you expand on that because often, and I'm sure there are people in this room who've never heard this, often people think, to touch on this briefly, often people think karma is what goes around comes around, or people getting what they deserve, and it's not. The word karma, you're 100% correct, literally translates to action, right? And as the Buddha taught it, karma is generated three ways: body, speech, mind, thoughts, words, and actions. The only thing I would kind of push back on a little bit with what you said is karma is not about good or bad. It's not evil, as you said, or pure, or whatever words you want to look at the opposite of. Say again?
It's objective.
It's just simply, it's even beyond that, though, is my point. It's just action. It's the law of cause and effect. So what Theo is saying is that, yes, everything we do, we're all sitting here right now because of our karma. And for those who've never heard it explained this way, this isn't what you deserve. Karma is not what you deserve. Karma is not what you get. I'll put you this way. Karma is what you bring into the world. Just to expand on this briefly for those who don't know it. It's not what we get, it's what we give, right? Think of playing pool, and every time you hit the cue ball, the white ball into the rack. Every time you hit that cue ball into the rack, every ball goes into a different direction. Our entire life, we are that cue ball. We often think, well, if I do good, I'm going to get good. If I do bad, I'm going to get bad. That's not karma. That's a very selfish view of karma that makes it all about you. Karma is just what we give. And so what we give with body, speech, and mind is what is the law of cause and effect. But what we're giving beyond the definition of good or bad or right or wrong, but yes, to your point, correct, that our karma is what creates each moment. So when I say your karma brought you all here, every thought, every word, every action you've done your entire life somehow magically landed you here on a Tuesday at 7 o'clock. It's not good, it's not bad. If I walk across the street and I get hit by a car, we're going to say, whose fault is that? Who's to blame? Who's legally responsible? That's not karma. Karma is not morals. Karma is not ethical. Karma is not right and wrong, good or bad, or responsibility. I, karmically, am equally responsible for that happening. Why?
You were right in the street.
I walked into the street. If I just sat my butt down here and didn't move, that couldn't have happened.
It's like the Chinese tale of the maiden. You know that?
Probably. No, but hang on.
It reminds me of the butterfly effect.
So yes, that's karma. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I read the karma was the third truth.
The third truth?
Yeah.
There's a million things you can read and a million teachers who will use a million numbers and describe things in a million different ways. So, I mean, as far as it being the third, I can't speak to that, but the law of karma it's a law. I mean, it's the law of cause and effect. So, yeah. What else? Other questions? There's a hand in the back, yeah.
Just recently, the Dalai Lama said that they're gonna find a new Dalai Lama when he passes.
Uh-huh.
And I'm just curious, if Siddhartha, his life when he ended, that was it for him, that he didn't have to karmically, whatever, come back and do stuff again. Is it the essence of Siddhartha that's what they're trying to find in the next Dalai Lama? Or is it a part of Siddhartha reincarnating?
Yeah, good question. So the question around the Dalai Lama just turned 90, his statements about his next rebirth and other people who are trying to identify the next Dalai Lama. which, oh, by the way, certain other people say they already have the next Dalai Lama, which is quite interesting because the Dalai Lama is still alive.
Yeah.
But without getting into any, because we don't talk politics here, we don't talk religions here, so without getting into any of that, first I want to separate this idea, because the way you asked that made it sound as if the Dalai Lama is the Buddha. It's not. Dalai Lama and Siddhartha Gautama are two completely different sentient beings. Siddhartha Gautama died. The Dalai Lama, they say, technically, fundamental Buddhist teachings, they say it's the literal rebirth, endless continuation of the large statue in the middle behind me is Kuan Yin. Her name means hearer of the world's cry. She hears all the suffering in the world and then pours out compassion to heal. You'll hear Avalokiteshvara, Chenrezig, Kanon in Japanese, Kwanon in Vietnamese. You'll hear her all different languages and ways. But she is the endless body of compassion. The Dalai Lama, they say, is the literal reincarnation of this Bodhisattva Kuan Yin. His name means ocean of wisdom. So it's important to understand that based on, so two separate people, based on that teaching alone, then you look at the Bodhisattva teachings. Bodhisattva, Bodhi is enlightened, Sattva is being. The Bodhisattva teachings are that the vow of a Bodhisattva is to be reborn life after life until all sentient beings are free from suffering. So this was not the practice of Siddhartha Gautama, who became the Buddha, died, parinirvana, no remainder, done. The Bodhisattva path and practice, which is really kind of discovered about 500 years after the Buddha died, they say that they're going to be reborn life after life until all beings are free from suffering. So then you get very specific into Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism, which is what I've studied the least, but Tibetan Buddhism says that there are literal reincarnations of certain beings, right? So for example, there was a play I saw years ago, it was really cute, it's called like The Eldest Child or something like that. And these two Tibetan lamas show up at like some Midwestern home in Iowa.
Oh, it's the little Buddha.
No, yeah, but that one's similar, but different one. And these family, they show up, and these two lamas are like, yeah, your 8-year-old child, your 8-year-old boy is the reincarnation of our famous lama. And they're like, huh? Right? So that's how Tibetan views rebirth or reincarnation, that one specific individual is literally reincarnated into another. And so they'll do all kinds of tests, and a lot of movies, they'll show this in the little bit and things like that. They'll do a lot of tests to identify, like when this child is maybe 5 years old, they'll show a cane and some glasses and a bowl and all these kinds of things. And the child's able to identify everything that was theirs. The same way you might be able to identify, you know, your shoes when you go outside, or your car if you drove, or, you know, where you live. They're no different. That's how accurate they are with that. So the other interesting thing about the bodhisattvas is they say that a true bodhisattva actually determines their rebirth. Like that they're so liberated and enlightened and just in a whole nother level that I have no idea what that is even like, that they can determine where they're reborn, no different than you're going to determine when you stand up, you're going to go out there and grab your shoes, right? Simple, no big deal. That's what a bodhisattva's rebirth is like. So with all that in mind, again, kind of like the first question about, you know, the child, you have to understand the context of all these things. With all that in mind, what the Dalai Lama is coming out and saying, to my understanding, is one, he's saying that, hey, this is what's going to happen with my rebirth, however he said it, because what he's trying to say is that these people who say they have me don't. That's what he's protecting against. There was a point in time years ago where he actually had said that he would not be reborn. I didn't actually see his full statement recently. I've heard pieces of it, but I haven't pulled it up specifically. But years ago, he said he would not be reborn because he wanted to make it very clear that whoever was claiming that they had him, they don't. So he might have changed that recently and still made some other thing. But he's really protected against people that are saying they have him. Yeah. And then we'll close.
Has there ever been a female Dalai Lama?
The question was, has there ever been a female Dalai Lama? To my knowledge, no.
Yet the
Right? Men, we ruin everything. We have, no, you can say it. I second that, and
What does that mean? Because there will be.
there will be, yes. God willing, I hope there is, So I'll close with this thought. It's like, how could that be? It's really great questions because it's actually addressing certain aspects of Buddhism a lot of people don't dive into around rebirth, around Bodhisattva reincarnation, around cultural aspects of these things. And I'll close with this thought. Keep in mind that Buddhism, as a religion, a 2000 very old religion, is not free from oppression and sexism and everything else that goes along with that, right? Because what you have in 2,500 years of people practicing what the Buddha taught is what? People. Unenlightened people. Unenlightened people will do unenlightened things, such as oppress, right? And so then you have, forget the religion or even the philosophy, the teachings of the Buddha, then you have cultures. You have 2,500 years of cultures where there is no equality. India 2,500 years ago, at the time of the Buddha, and you've probably heard me say this, but it was a boys' club.
They burned their what?
It was that, yeah, I don't know about that part, but hang on.
Yeah.
At the time of the Buddha, men only were allowed to become monks. There was no equality, right? And what happened was one of his disciples, it was his aunt who raised him. I believe she was the first, came to him and wanted to become a nun. And he said, it's men only, right? And he said to him, do women not have the same ability, faculty to awaken as men do? And he said, yeah, they do. So he allowed women to become nuns. So much of what the Buddha did, I consider incredibly rebellious, very much an activist in trying to open things up. But at the same time, then you have India 2,500 years ago and still to today. There is no equality around the world for women. And so you drop Buddhism on top of that, and that's what you're going to have. You've seen Karma Lecture Soma, who's been fighting, as a Tibetan Buddhist nun for 50 years. She's been fighting this for 50 years. So it's really beautiful to see those who kind of lead the way and continue to fight for that. But you have the same oppression that you have anywhere else because of the cultures, not because of the specific teachings, but because of the people. Yeah. So, all right, I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May any merit gained from this practice be transferred to all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. All right, before you all head out, Dharma Bum host Eddie has a few announcements. And one quick announcement before Eddie starts. For those who are marching the Pride Parade, or if you're not, you're welcome to join us. Go to the website, you'll see the info top right, Pride Parade 2025. We're marching Saturday the 19th. And the update, which went out in newsletters anyways, is 10 a.m. We're going to meet here at the temple. And we will walk over to our staging spot together. So if you are marching or you want to march, come here Saturday morning, 10 a.m. But it's also good to go on the website, RSVP there.
About Monday.
And Monday, if you want to clean up the park, we need a lot of help Monday morning, so that'll also be on the website. Thanks, Theo. Go ahead, Eddie, sir.
Hello, everyone. I'm tonight's host. My name is Eddie. Theo. Good to see you all. I think we should have a Theo night here. That sounds like We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They are simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We have classes and programs every day and everything we offer here is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway of the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you're done with it. Please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. If a few people could stay to close and latch the windows, that would be helpful. Thank you for being here. We wish you well. Hope to see you all again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.